This is Odds On with Mike Palm and Amal Shaw, live from the Circus Sportsbook on VSiN, the sports betting network.
Welcome into Odds On. I'm Mike Palm. It's International Women's Day, so we did all the women of the world a favor. We gave Amal Shaw the day off. That means I need a ton of guests to help us overcome that. In 15 minutes, we're going to have Frank Schwab from Yahoo Sports on. He'll join us by Skype. We'll discuss with Frank the two big quarterback moves in the NFL today. Aaron Rodgers staying in Green Bay and Russell Wilson going to the Broncos. In 45 minutes, Professor Aaron Moore of Rider University breaks down some college basketball tournaments for us. But first, in studio, the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Matt Metcalf, director of Circus Sports. Matt, thanks for taking the time this morning.
Thanks for having me.
You're always terrific on these shows and on the many podcasts that you do. I want to ask you a couple bookmaking questions first. Is conference tournament week with all these games, especially on Wednesday and Thursday, 68, 70 games, is this the most difficult week of the year for the bookmakers?
I would say for bookmakers / odds makers, it's probably one of them. For a variety of reasons, I didn't really do as much college basketball odds making this year. As most people could probably tell, we didn't open the first number in the world like we did last year. But normally these weeks are such a sprint for me to kind of compile my power ratings, get through all the conference brackets and figure out what I think the odds should be, open up the futures prices for the conference tournaments, and then start hanging the games. And as the games are ending, you're trying to get the next game up. You know, we have a little bit of a reprieve this year, like I said, because we're not opening the first number in the world, so it's made it a lot easier. But normally, yeah, it's just starts here and you don't sleep for a month.
Is it harder manually making the in-game number at the breaks on the NFL games? Because you do all the games. Let's say there's 8, 9, 10 games in that morning window. Or trying to get all these halftime lines up with all these tournaments going on?
I mean, both of them are kind of processes that you just kind of get used to because you do this so often. We have guys who specialize in that. So they get to a point where they know the situations. They kind of know the numbers. They can just kind of throw up a number, honestly. I mean, it's not... if you were doing it coming in cold and, haven't watched an NFL game all year, hadn't made a number, it'd be a little more challenging. But, we've made halftime lines all year on every game. And so I wouldn't say that's a huge challenge to come in and make college basketball halftimes.
All right, I want to talk about less developed markets and what's scary or what's exciting about getting into them more. I wanted to use two examples. In Iowa with Circus Sports, they've asked for wrestling. Obviously, college wrestling, huge there. Dan Gable had the run of national titles. They're in the top 5 every year. Iowa State, a very good program. And women's college basketball seems to be an emerging market now. Most books aren't just booking the tournament, but booking regular season games for the top 25. What do you fear most about it, and what's most exciting about developing markets?
I would say this is a touchy subject, or not, maybe touchy is the wrong word, but when we opened Circus Sports, we definitely had a limited amount of manpower, and we're focusing so heavy on high limits that, I was very vocal about we're not doing these smaller markets. And people would come to me, and we had guys who were talented odds makers who wanted to do smaller markets. And I'd say, I appreciate the effort, but I don't want to put these on the board because honestly, if I put up, one smaller sport, then people are going to say, well, why don't you have this smaller sport? And I'm going to get in an argument about which one is better. I'm a big proponent of giving people whatever they want to bet on. But for us, it has to make sense from a handle standpoint. It has to be worth our time to make odds on it. So, as you mentioned, yes, we've done college wrestling in Iowa, and I think that's kind of like a unique one-off, just kind of, to appeal to a new market where we're trying to get our foot in the door. But I do agree with you that markets like women's college basketball and, men's college baseball, those are markets that we've seen a lot of traction on, and I fully expect those markets to become mainstream within the next, 3 to 5 years, and especially the women's college tournament. As long as the TV coverage keeps picking up, I don't see any reason why that won't, just keep growing in popularity.
We're at another labor stalemate with Major League Baseball. The latest rounds of meeting not encouraging owners, saying the players are further away than they were in the first round. There's a real possibility we don't get Major League Baseball for a couple months or maybe all summer. How much uptick do you think in right and attention will there be on college baseball if that happens?
I'd like to say a lot. I think it'll be pretty minimal. But I do think there's a hardcore audience for college baseball that will maybe be more enthusiastic with no baseball or no Major League Baseball going. I don't see that really translating a ton into any other right besides maybe NBA. I don't see it kind of spilling over into all these auxiliary sports. Or ancillary, excuse me.
Speaking with Matt Metcalf, director of Circus Sports, I heard you say on a podcast about a month ago that you thought Gonzaga was clearly the best team in the country. You also made the comment if at some point Kentucky and Arizona were to get knocked out, at maybe even early round of 16 or earlier in the tournament, Gonzaga should be worse than even money. Currently, right now, you can get the Zags at about 7-2 to win the national title. Do you think that's a good price to bet them at?
No, I don't think 7-2 is. And an interesting side note, last night was the first Gonzaga game I've watched all year. So I did make that comment that they were 5 points better than the field before watching them. And after the first 5 minutes of the game, I was patting myself on the back, telling myself how smart I am. And then they kind of blew the cover in the end. But I get very opinionated when I make odds, and I like to voice my opinion, especially when I'm in a private room when nobody is going to make fun of me for it. So I did tell Matt Youmans that 5 points thing. When I said that, I believe it, but at the same time, I know the market, who knows more than me, probably thought it was a couple points. I still think at worst they're 3 points better than Arizona, and to me, Arizona is kind of the clear-cut number 2 team. And I just think that Gonzaga, the way they've structured their program, they're playing in essence to win a national title. I almost compare it to like an NBA team who goes out there and the final goal, it doesn't really matter how you get there. They just want to peak at the right time. So I really see their ceiling being a couple, 2 to 3 points higher. And I really think that you've seen the best maybe out of a lot of these other teams. And so I just think once you get going in the tournament, the way Gonzaga plays and just their style, I think they have the potential to really be better than the field by a lot. But I would need at this point, I would say probably at least 4-1. And I still would say 5-1 is the bet I would recommend.
They play tonight, 6 o'clock right here in Las Vegas at the Orleans Arena. West Coast Conference Finals. This is a revenge spot for them. They beat St. Mary's in Washington by 16 earlier in the year. That was a push. They were a 16-point favorite. They were laying 10.5 at St. Mary's in Moraga. Only scored, I think, 21 points in the first half. Lost that game by 10. Tonight, they're a 12 or 12.5-point favorite at the Orleans. Any opinion on tonight's game?
I mean, the two lines you just read to me says the line should be 14. So I'd lay 12 all day, 12.5. I'm on the fence, but minus 12 would be a good bet if the number gets there.
You're a Florida graduate, so you pay particular attention to the SEC. They have the tournament this year at Amalie Arena in Tampa Bay. Is that going to be enough to get your Gators maybe even one win in this tournament?
Well, it's funny. I would say that in all the cities in Florida, the highest concentration of Gator fans is probably in Tampa. So, if you believe in any kind of home court, I don't really factor that kind of stuff in, especially on like an off neutral site type thing. So, no, I don't think that's enough to get them there. They're not as bad as I think as they've been made out to be, but they're still, a middle of the pack SEC team.
Auburn ends up winning the regular season 15-3. They were ranked 1 for a while. Kentucky and Tennessee tied for second, 14-4. Kentucky the favorite to win the tournament at plus 190. Auburn plus 235. Tennessee plus $3. Arkansas really hot late in the year. Went on that big run. The only game they lost was at Alabama. Beat Kentucky in a terrific game at the Bud Walton as 8-1, and Alabama 23-1. Any of those teams outside of Kentucky you think have a legitimate shot of winning this tournament?
I was just talking about this with someone, but I do think Kentucky actually, that price is a little high to me. I'd probably have Kentucky a little lower. I actually didn't do our prices at Circa Sports, so I'm giving you plays into our lines, which I would think plus $2 to me would probably be a good bet if you could find it. I really like Alabama, and I know they've been kind of an up and down team, but I think they would draw Kentucky in the second round. I think they'd only be at most like a 6-point dog. If they can pull off the upset there, I think they're as good as most of the other teams outside of it being a little worse than Tennessee. But I think if they could somehow get through Kentucky, I think 23-1 is not a bad bet. I think there's some value there.
I'm going to give you another price I think is wrong, and it's not just here, but a lot of spots. Arizona minus 130 to win the Pac-12. Is that what number you'd make them?
Yeah, I actually ran through some numbers this morning. I did Pac-12, Big 12, SEC. That was probably one of the numbers that I kind of ran into that I probably will bet myself. I had the number a little closer to $2 in Arizona. I just think they're the class of the conference. And I will concede that I think I've been a little off my number on UCLA all year. So I might have I might be a little wrong there. UCLA might be better than I'm figuring them. But still, I think minus 180 is the floor for this price. I'm really confused by it.
Saturday night at T-Mobile, we might see UCLA, Arizona in the rubber match in that game. What do you make the number right now if that's the Pac-12 final?
I knew you were going to ask me this question, and I'm so bad with UCLA that, I think my raw number says like 6 or 7. I have a feeling this number would be closer to 4 or 5, probably in the 4.5 range. That's my guess. I didn't put in as much work as I usually do in these numbers. So
yeah, I think it's 3.5. But I'm taking I bet Arizona at 120. I'd lay 130. I'd lay 140 as well. Real quick, should be a great Pac-12 or a Big 12 tournament in Kansas City like it always is. Baylor, Kansas, Texas Tech, Texas. Who do you like winning that event?
I just really have been so impressed what Baylor's done in the past couple of years, and I have a hard time betting against them. To me, they seem to have the best coaching staff in the conference. You could argue Texas Tech is pretty solid too, but I really like what Baylor's done, and they just know how to win in these big games now. And they obviously with what they did last year, I'd probably be on Baylor in that conference at if I could get, I don't know, anything over 2-1 seems decent to me.
Yeah, they're plus 220. You can find out there right now. I'm on Texas Tech to make the Final Four at plus 675. I think Mark Adams is the coach of the year. Just such tremendous defensive effort they give. Got about 45 seconds. Coming up next month right here at Circa, the second Bet Bash. You were instrumental in bringing that event here. You want to tell the folks about it?
Yeah, so April 1st through April 4th at Circa Resort in Las Vegas, we are hosting the second annual Bet Bash, or I hesitate to say annual, there might be more than one a year. Got together with Spanky, who's a well-known personality on Twitter, a professional sports bettor, and we decided, let's make this into a 4-day event. So I think we have 3 open bars. We have a panel with 4 different lecture kind of series or guests on the panel. And then we're also doing, I think, a breakfast on Monday morning of the national championship game where you're going to meet with professional bettors and also famous bookies. And then Monday night it'll culminate in the national championship game. We'll have an open bar for that at the biggest sports book in the world right behind me.